All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today and starting off our Regulation F webinar series. We still have some people pouring in, but we have a ton of content to go over today. So we are just going to let people pour in and jump and while they're jumping in here. We are going to have an ongoing series. So as we roll out our stuff in phases, we will be hosting webinar series. So please monitor your email and look for notifications for these webinars as we continue out through. So today for our webinar series, we have a few InterProse staff that are going to be guiding this. I'm going to be your host. My name is Victoria Anderson. I do planning here at InterProse. So if you've recently gone through your implementation, you've probably come across myself. We also have Cheryl Clapp here joining us today. She also is in planning, so strong chance that you've had the chance to meet with us. And we have our CTO, Greg Johnson, on, who is going to help us with our Q&A at the end, as well as Cheryl. These two folks have spent a lot of time looking into the Reg F stuff for us, so they're going to be our experts on that. All of our sessions are going to be recorded and placed on our help desk, so if you cannot make it today, or if you want to rewatch our recording from today, or you can't make a future session, then you'll be able to go check those out. And we are going to be having a lot of more documents coming on in support of the new editions of our Regulation F rollout. So please keep looking for our help files or reach out to support if you're not finding anything you need. Also, release notes. We have a lot of good information in there too. For the remainder of the session, we are going to keep you all on mute. We will mute you just to save on any background noise. And we'll do a Q&A at the end of our session once we've gotten through the content. So if you have any questions, please write them down or shoot them in the chat window. Cheryl Clapp and Greg are going to be helping answer some of those questions, and we can open up microphones at the end for some Q&A. All right, so let's jump right in. We have a ton of content to go in today. These first couple of sessions are going to be really jam-packed. We have a lot coming out in these first two phases. Our development team and other staff have been working around the clock to get these out for you. So the first thing we're going to look at is our itemization fields. Now, we're really going to be building up in this section to looking at our validation letter, but there are some things that we need to get some intro on before we jump into that. So one of our biggest new rollouts is going to be our itemization fields. I'm going to go to a recent account here. And you're going to notice that on our sidebar tools, we have this new tab here called Itemization, and that's where these itemization fields are going to be located for you. The main purpose of these itemization fields is that they are going to be populating the verification letter that we are going to see later. I'm going to go through each of these fields and give a little bit of a definition and later talk about some of the things like how to get data into these fields and the permissions that are involved in being able to edit these fields and access them. So our first field here at the top, our required field, itemization date. This is the itemization date defined by CFPB. We also have a little tooltip here. The next field is itemization date source. This is a field that defines the itemization date, and we have a bunch of options here you can choose from. The next field is called balance as of itemization date. This is the starting balance as the itemization date defined by the date source. And it's important to know that this balance here is not intended to be the assigned amount. This is strictly just the balance of the itemization date. We have a few fields below that. This field here, you can see that you can populate this, but these fields here are being contributed by these transaction here, as well as transactions on the account. And we're going to dive into each of these and look at some of the other things that are going on here. This first one, plus interest. This is interest accrued since the itemization date. And you can see here that on the side, we have a pending balance here. This is unserialized interest on the account. The interest will serialize in a couple of situations, and this is going to be when a transaction occurs on the account and right before our validation notices are populated. This will no longer show as pending. Our next field is plus fees. These are fees that have accrued since the itemization date. And you'll notice that this fee field here is being populated by a couple of sources. We have some fees down here in the itemization transactions. What's important to know is that these itemization transactions down here, these are going to be provided by your client. This field can also contain transaction data that has occurred post assignment and transactions that have occurred on the account. And for now, you're going to find these in the transactions section on the account. Similarly, we have our minus payments and credits. These are payments and credits that have accrued since the itemization date, and you may see some transactions from the client here as well. This itemization current balance field is the total of all the fields above plus the pending interest. You'll notice that there are some things on the side here of this field, and these are to help you match the current itemization current balance to the current balance of the account. So this is the total of the fields above, and then you'll notice the $1.37 of pending interest is added to create the current balance of the account. So this will help you reconcile between the itemization current balance and the current balance of the account. Now, I know you're wondering what happens if there is something that is off, and we have actually created a feature to help you keep your itemization balances matched. So I'm going to show you an account that is unbalanced here. First, you'll notice that at the top of the screen here in the summary section that we have a red pill that says itemization mismatch. And that is because the itemization current balance does not match the current balance of the account. You can get back to the itemization by using the sidebar tool here, or you can actually click on the pill as well. So since there is an itemization mismatch, the first place I'm going to look is I'm going to see that there is a, I'm going to look at the itemization current balance here. I can see that there is $10,952.32, and it looks like our current balance of the account is $10,972.32. So there is a little bit of a difference there. Now for these itemization transactions, if you have the permissions to do so, you can edit the itemization transactions to reconcile the itemization mismatch. Now this is a make-believe situation, so I already know what what's wrong here, but there are a couple of ways you can edit these itemization transactions. If you have a missing itemization transaction and need to add one, you can use this new button down here and simply add a new itemization transaction. Or if you need to edit one that's existing, you can click on one of these itemization transactions and update the amount. You can see I've put in, there's a $20 difference here that I'm fixing here. And once I click save, you'll notice that I no longer have an itemization mismatch pill because it has been fixed. Let's go back to our itemization fields here. We have a couple of more to get through. The next one is going to be our itemization creditor name. And I have a sample client in here, but I'm going to tell you about a few of the ways this is going to be filled out. One is if the collection type is a debt buyer, the ACE customer's company name will be used. If the collection type is not a debt buyer, the original credit grantor company name will be used. If there is no original credit grantor populated, the client's name will be used, and that is the case of this sample account here. Next, we have the itemization description. This is a service or product that is associated with that itemization date. You may have the situation where you need to have a default itemization description that is going to be global. And in that case, we do have a place for you to put that information. That's going to be under Setup, and then System here down at the bottom. And you'll notice there's a field here called Default Itemization Description. And by putting in your description here, you will have a global default itemization description. And that may really save you on some data entry depending on how you're going to get some of this information in. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how do I get some of this itemization, either transactions or information into my application. So let's talk about first our itemization transactions, which if you remember here, let's go back. Can we load these itemization transactions? And the answer is yes. We developed a new ETL load method that we're going to take a peek at. Of course, you can always use this new button to load them manually, but let's look at how you can use an ETL profile. We're just going to go right to Accounts, ETL Import and Profiles. I have a sample ETL profile set up here. And it's really important that you see that you use this load method here called itemization transactions. And this is a pretty simple loader. I have some sample fields mapped here, but there really aren't all that many. So I'll read these off for you guys. We have customer account number, client code, client account number, reference number, transaction date, transaction amount, bucket, operator, receiver, type, and note. So those are some of the options you have for loading those transactions. We do have an ETL layout that is published. If you'd like to take a peek at that, it is in our help files, and that is a great place to get started. If you get stuck creating this ETL profile, please feel free to reach out to support. Now, there are some other fields that we have that can be loaded as well. Looking back at our fields. So we were just looking at our itemization transactions, but there are some other fields up here that we have a few methods that we can use to populate these. That's going to be our account assignment ETL loader, our account management tool, our account manager tool, excuse me, client profiles, action paths, and even manually. We're going to go take a peek at a few of the ways of populating these. The first is we're going to go look at a sample client profile. So when you have new accounts coming in and your clients begin supplying this data to you, you can use edit your account assignment ETL loader to accommodate for some of these fields. Let's go back to Accounts, ETL Import and Profiles. I have my lovely sample client here. So this load method is still going to be account assignments, but what I've done is in this data mapping area, I have added an extra field down here at the very end, so we can go look at all the fields that are available for you to load with an account assignment. So I'm going to go into here and just type in itemization. And we can look at all the fields that we are able to load in an account assignment loader. We have our itemization creditor name, itemization description, itemization owing balance, itemization date source, and itemization date. So you can really get a lot of that information using an account assignment loader. Now, maybe an ETL loader isn't the best option for you. Maybe you have a smaller group of accounts that you would like to update these fields on, and in that case, our account manager tool is going to be great for that. So our account manager tool here is going to be up in workflow in our menu here, and then account manager. Now you're going to need to pre-make a logic condition to select the accounts you'd like to set some fields on. If you need to create a logic block, you can click this dial here and create the logic block, and it will bring you back here once you save, but I already have one pre-put together for our presentation. So I'm going to select my sample 1 accounts. And in this section here, you can select the fields that you would like to populate. And I'm going to do the itemization date source. Okay, you can see that we have a lot of options here. You'll notice that if you remember our itemization date source is a drop-down menu, and what's really important that when you are going to set this field that you use a specific syntax when typing this out. So it needs to be in all caps, and any space is going to be represented as an underscore and dashes as well. So for example, charge off date would be charge underscore off underscore date. And of course, after clicking process, yes, that field is going to be set for all of our sample one accounts, and we'll set this field here, our itemization charge off date. Another way to set the itemization source and itemization description is going to be in the client profile, and that will allow you to autofill those fields for that client. So let's go take a peek at the client profile. Actually, just going to use this link here in the sample account. And we have a brand new section that's dedicated for these itemization fields here. So we're going to scroll down. And this is the section right here called Itemization Preferences. And you'll notice that we have a couple of fields here, and that's going to be the itemization date source and the itemization description. This will be really helpful for when you're populating new accounts. These will just autofill into those. Now that we've seen our itemization fields, let's go take a look at the roles and permissions that are associated for these itemization fields. I'm going to go to a user profile here. Going to go to an admin. So our admin users should be automatically getting these permissions and should be able to function in the manner that I am today. So if you have other users that will need to have permissions for these, you will need to add this to their user profiles. Let's go back down here to our permission role section here. Let's bump this all the way out. And the role associated with the itemization fields is called Manage Itemization Fields. I'm going to use the control find function here. Oops, I still got caps lock on. All right, here we are. Manage itemization field. So there's our role. And within the role, you can see the permissions that are associated. So we have view, delete, edit, update. So our more typical permissions here associated with this role. That is pretty much the cap of our itemization fields. There is another set of fields that we're going to look at that contribute to our validation letter that are important to know before we jump into that letter. And that is going to be our validation fields. There are a handful. Some of them are on the letter profile and some of them are on the account. We're going to take a peek at both before running that validation letter. So let's go look at the letter profile first. So we're going to go to Setup, Letters, and Profiles. And I have a sample validation letter profile here. So one of our newest features here is going to be, in addition to a letter type, we now have a letter category. When you begin a new letter profile, the default here, there are a few options. The default is going to be Other. We're going to be focused on this validation notice category type today. There are a few things that are important to know about this, selecting the right category for your validation notice. So when you're creating this profile, you're going to need to make, for your validation letter specifically, you're going to want to make sure that you have this correctly selected to validation notice. The reason why that is important is because when this letter is run, it stamps specific fields on the account, and that will not occur if this validation notice category is not selected. So please make sure that you are validating that this has been selected. Speaking of those fields, let's go look at an account and look at the validation fields that we have. So let's go back to an account here. We're going to scroll down. And within our debt information section, there's going to be 3 fields, and I'm actually going to use my control find thing here to highlight these for you. Okay, you can see they're highlighting here in yellow. There are 3 fields that we're going to talk about: validation notice sent date, validation notice return date, and validation notice end date. First up, our validation notice sent date. This is stamped when the validation letter is sent. The next field we're going to look at is right below the validation notice return date. You'll notice that on the sample account it is blank. This can populate if you are uploading a return file from a letter vendor, or perhaps AWS rejects sending an email validation letter. Emails that are rejected by the consumer server or mail that's returned manually to or returned back to your agency will need to be manually updated here. Our last field we're going to look at is our validation notice end date. This is a calculated field compared to the others, and this is a 30-day window plus the buffer, which is determined by your agency. To set up your buffer, we're going to go look at that to keep, which will contribute to this validation notice end date, and this field will appear and populate onto your validation notice if you're using the model form. That we'll see here in a little bit. So let's go see where we set up our buffer. We're going to set up our buffer in the Setup menu under System. We've actually already been here once to go look at our default itemization description. So you'll notice there's 2 more fields underneath that: our validation notice letter buffer and our validation notice email buffer. So we have both here. So this buffer is included in that that validation notice end date and will need to be determined by you. What's important to know is that this buffer here does not include holidays and weekends. So once you've determined what your buffer is, you're going to want to make sure that you have all of your holidays set up in your application. If it's been a while since you've looked at your holidays, I'm going to show you where you can go review your holidays to make sure they are up to date. To look at your holidays, you're going to go back to Setup and then Company Profile. And all the way down here at the bottom, you'll see that we have holidays and non-work days. So once these are entered here, these will not be included in your buffer. That is the end of our validation fields. So let's go back and look at our roles and permissions that are involved in these validation fields. Let's go back to our sample admin user. And just like our itemization roles here, these are going to be rolled out to our admins. So if you have other users who need to be able to have some of the permissions that I've shown you today, you'll need to make sure that you give them the necessary roles and permissions to do so. This role is called Manage Account Validation Notice Fields. So let's look at that up here. Here we are, right here, Manage Account Validation Notice Fields. That's going to be your role. And again, we have some pretty standard permissions associated as far as inserting, updating, viewing, etc. All right, that is all the prerequisites that we need to know before jumping into our model form validation letter. So let's go back to our letter profile and take a peek at the template. We're going to go back to Setup, Letters and Profiles, and jump back into our sample validation letter profile here. We've already talked about our validation notice category here. I'm going to go ahead and download this template here so we can take a peek. This template was put together by Cheryl Clapp, who is on with us today, and she did a really wonderful job creating this template based upon the model form letter that, so let's go ahead and open this up. All right, so we have our LibreOffice template here, and we will be providing this template on our help desk files if you would like to use this to get started with getting your validation letter put together. But please note that this is based off the model form letter, and you still need to do your due diligence to make sure this is vetted by your agency and or the attorneys and or your attorneys here. So we have a note here at the top and a big watermark through the center here. I'm going to talk about a few of the elements that are making up this template that has been put together here. So we have some comments on the sidebar that describe and define some of the itemization lines here. These will be really helpful in helping you understand how we came to match the fields here that are going to pull data into ACE to the descriptions here. Just like most of your all of your other letters that you're producing out of ACE, all of these gray fields here, if you remember back to core training and setup, these are going to be pulling data from your application into this letter. Some of them you'll notice are familiar. So in this yellow box here, these are going to be all of our itemization fields that we saw first. So itemization description, itemization date, we have itemization interest balance total. And you'll notice when I put my cursor over these gray fields, you'll notice that the name pops up here as well. So that can be very helpful. And then over here on the right-hand side, we're going to have that validation notice end date, and that is your 30-day window plus the buffer that you're going to enter in. As well, you'll notice some highlighted yellow fields here. These are hard-coded in there, and these are going to, if you would like to use these, you'll need to go and make sure and edit those, but those are some hard-coded fields. They are not going to, since they're not gray, they're not going to be pulling that data out of your application. All of these fields are also going to be available for your letter vendor. So look out for some documentation in the help files or contact support to get started with editing your files you're sending to your letter vendor to get some of these fields populated in there. All right, now that we've gotten a good look at our template here, let's go ahead and go to our sample account and run this letter. All right, we're going to run this letter just like any other manually produced letter. We're going to go to our letter actions, send a letter, and we're going to select our validation letter here. And we're going to use PDF outsource, and we're just going to go ahead and print that. So right now, while this letter is doing its thing, our interest on the account has been serialized for this letter to be produced here. So keep that in mind. So on the account there, you should not have the pending interest anymore. It will be serialized to be included in on this letter. All right, and this is what our model form validation letter looks like. We have some of our important information here. So our sample one client and the description here, itemization description. And these are going to be our itemization fields that we discussed today, as well as our calculated validation and notice date. Okay, so now that we have made it all the way to our validation letter, learned about our itemization fields and validation notice fields, we have a couple of more additions that we have added to the account screen that we're going to take a peek at before moving on to our Q&A. Okay, so let's go back to an account here. Back down to our debt information section here on an account. We have also added, in addition to our do not call, do not email fields here, we have also added in a do not text. So this is going to be new here. And this is related to some of the firewall stuff that we have and more future firewall stuff coming out in the future. Another addition that we've added to the validation, or excuse me, to the account screen is a validation notice given field, and that's going to be for your phone logs. So right here on the sidebar in our phone logs, if you're, you'll need to coordinate with your dialer vendor on this, but if you are going to be giving validation notice information over the phone and need to record that in your phone logs, you'll notice here in this header, there is a new field here, validation notice given. To add this to your table here, you're just going to right-click on the table, and you'll want to add this validation notice given field here and click apply, and it will add this to your phone log table. So that is the end of our new developments. But before we move on to our Q&A, I want to talk about some of the things that we have coming out in the future. There's been a few questions about our itemization groups, and what that is, for example, medical debt that's been grouped based on the service date. That will be coming out in our phase 3, which is scheduled to come out on November 7th. But our next phase 2, we have a few topics that are coming out, such as preventing restricted accounts from coming up in work list, restricted account tools, restricted account data workflow access, a method to identify 7 calls/7 attempts in 7 consecutive days. And that's, again, some of that firewall stuff. Firewall restriction override for consumers, allowed contact within a 7-day period. And a method to evaluate or clear stored calls, attempts, and contacts within a window of time. All of this that I've just talked about can be found on our ACE development plans document that we've sent out. You may have seen a link called Reg F roadmap document. So all of our phases and release dates can be found there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor for the next 30 minutes or so for our Q&A. If you've submitted any questions in our chat or would like to unmute and ask questions, now is the time.
Thank you, Victoria. This is Greg Johnson, the CTO here at InterProse. I just wanted to follow up really quick with a couple questions that were in the chat. I wanted to make sure that in case people weren't looking, that they are aware. When an itemization mismatch does occur, there is a trigger that you can wire up to manage that workflow as you see best at your agency. We do those checks on placement as well as right before a validation letter or validation notice gets sent. That would be email or via letter, so that you don't accidentally send out a notice that is potentially has some itemization issues with it. Then also just a small change. Those validation notice buffers, as well as the itemization descriptions, default descriptions, we have created a new compliance section that will be coming out in the next release. So those items have been moved onto the compliance section. That's the same area where you'll be setting up your 7 and 7 rules and settings. We'll cover that in our next webinar.
Yeah, there is a question about if these are going to be recorded. Yes, all of our webinar series will be recorded in case you would like to rewatch or aren't able to attend. We will be putting these on our help desk.
All right, looks like the questions are flying in here.
I'll answer John's. How do we manually enter an itemization for a new account? Right now, at this time, that's showing up in the account screen right where Victoria is at. So it's really showing up. So as soon as the account is added, you can go to the itemization, the sidebar itemization, and you can enter that data right here where the detail is. So at the moment, that's where that's at. Greg, do I have that right?
That is correct. Yep. We will. That is scheduled for a later release. We have not officially published the date of that yet, but it is coming, as well as for a client access account adding.
Yep. And I think what Greg's referring to, and John as well, when you add a new account, the new account page doesn't have a place to add the itemization detail, but as soon as it's been saved, you'll be able to go to this itemization section right now and add it. And in the future, there should be something else there already. So you'll be able to add it there.
So it looks like the next question we have are many of these fields only required and populated on the very first notice to the debtor. That is correct. If you send another validation notice, though, it's going to overlay whatever was previously set on those fields. So the history of that, of course, is always stored in the notes, but they will be overlaid if you send multiple validation notices out. Hope that answers your question. The fields being required or not, that is all controlled via roles and permissions as well. Let's see. Sorry, busy looking through these questions here. So the validation ETL loader would work with your existing placement files. You're going to have to update your existing ETL profiles to map in the new data. I believe that's what you're asking. The other option is that you can set them on the client itself, and if they are not mapped in the ETL loader, they're going to refer back to the client's fields for whatever those settings are. So for example, if you have it set to last service date, if the last service date is populated, it's going to copy that into the itemization date field for you automatically.
Just to follow up on what Greg's talking about is in your account assignments ETL loader here, you're going to want to hit this green plus button, which will add more fields here. And this is under the assumption that you're getting this data in an account assignment file from your client. And if that case, if you are, you can add these fields to map and select the itemization fields. And I think one thing that's helpful is going in here and looking to see what's available and potentially asking your client for this information.
So currently the model notice that we have here, Cheryl, I believe that's available in our ACE ACE help.
Yes, it is. It is out there right now. So you should be able to go to it. There's also a link from the release notes. I believe if you have ACE open, when you have the release notes open, the digital version, you should be able to link right to it. But otherwise, you can search on model validation notice and you should be able to find it in our help files and download it. It's an attached LibreOffice template. And if you upload it into ACE just like it is, you're not going to probably want to use it that way because it's going to have the watermark and the red text up at the top. But you can copy the content of that LibreOffice template just like any other sample template we have in ACE and paste it into another LibreOffice document. Another important thing to know about this notice is those comments you see, they're kind of useful references and you can leave those in your template copy. They won't print on the page when you generate the letter, but if you need to download your own templates later, you'll be able to see those notes there. Obviously test that, make sure it's working for you the way it needs to, but hopefully that'll be helpful. We have quite a few questions here. Greg, if there's any you want me to hit, let me know. I don't want to
Sure.
cover
Yep.
the
No,
same ones.
just looking here. So we have how do fees and amounts paid get updated in the itemization if new fees or transactions are applied after placement. So that is just that's just going to go ahead and auto update based on whatever has been paid. So if you were to send a new validation notice out, it's going to go ahead and capture that new information and stamp that in your itemization history. Hope that answers your question. If not, feel free to chime in. I don't know if people can unmute themselves at all, so we can have a discussion if it warrants it, but that might be beneficial.
Oh, it says cannot take control. Hold on, I'm gonna unmute all.
Always dangerous.
I don't know how else to give people control. So I'm gonna unmute you all. So I'm gonna ask if you remute yourself, and then um, if you have a question, please feel free to unmute yourself to ask.
So the next question we have on here is if you want to use an old validation notice for a client, yeah, you absolutely do not change anything at all. So we're just providing the tools. We're not auto updating anything. What we have done is every existing letter and email template has been, or profile has been marked as other. So you're going to actually have to go into those profiles and change them to validation notice if you want that validation logic to activate. Yes, validation balances can be loaded upon placement. Again, you're going to have to remap those fields in or set them at the client level so that they can auto copy into those fields. I'm not quite sure, Matt. This is in regards to whether or not you have the date of the model letter sent date expires plus buffer in regards to the mail return. Not quite sure what you're asking for on there. So we do, when the mail return comes in, we do automatically stamp that validation notice return date. If we see a mail return set on the account during that validation, if it occurs before the validation notice end date. See, in the letter profile setup, is it possible to add an option to only include the same client codes in the letter? There can be new assignments the same day in the bundle for patient from different clients. I think that's probably going to be covered in the itemization group option. Then we had another question. Again, if there's an itemization mismatch, yes, the validation letter will not be sent. So there'll be a trigger that will fire, and you can wire up your logic to put it on a work list to be corrected, evaluated.
That was a good question.
For the phone log section and the new validation field, that is, if we go back and look at that validation notice given, so that field will only get populated if you have it mapped in your phone log, inbound dialer request, and that your dialer is capturing it. So that's basically a placeholder at this point. I'm not sure if TCN or Intelligent Contacts has. We have not coordinated with them on whether or not they are going to be able to supply that to us. I'm assuming you can set that up with miscellaneous fields and we can map to it that way. The next question we have here is when a debtor wants to dispute the debt, there is a URL provided in the model validation notice. We'll probably recommend that you send them to our virtual agent. That's probably the best way to handle those disputes. And again, if you need a shorter URL, you can always create a vanity URL that we can redirect for you as well. You can reach out to sales or support and they can help walk you through that.
In the model form validation letter here, how can you dispute the debt? There is a spot here where the dispute URL could potentially go.
We have when it, let's see, can you please explain the itemization description? So the itemization description is basically the location you see on this form on the model validation notice there. You can map to it at a per account level, or you can set it at a client level, or there is a global default. So for example, you could set your global default to service just in case it's not set. I think there's a question about the new letter profiles and where to download them. I don't know if you can, if we can send out that link again, or was there a link in the notice?
It's actually, you can search for that validation notice on the help files, and it is available to download right there
Okay, great.
from ACE.
If the return mail field is filled in, will there be an action path that would block the account from reporting to the credit bureau? There is an action path set up for mail returns. I think that's going to be a part of your credit reporting flagging logic, but we are going to cover credit bureau changes in later phases. I currently don't have that in front of me, so but we will be sure to cover that topic when we get to those later phases.
The question was asked, can you export itemization fields to a letter vendor? Yes. The fields that are shown here on the model form validation letter are going to be available to set up with your letter vendor.
So again, we've have a question. How would you set up the itemization section to create separate letters per client in a bundle that would have the same service date and itemization date for patient? Again, we're going to cover that in phase 3 when we get to that.
And I think that release is November 7th, I believe.
Yep.
So our just to clue you guys in a little bit how this webinar series is set up is we're expecting to do a release and then later that week do a webinar. So if you're noticing changes or see changes in our release notes, expect to see those things in the webinar that week. Okay, you should, I think I unmuted you. Hold on, let me try one more time to unmute you all. Let's see. Attendee is self-muted. Okay, you should be unmuted. Julie, do you want to try asking your question? Okay, if you're speaking, I am not able to hear you. If Aaron Ryder is on, will you help me figure out how to unmute everyone? I clicked unmute all participants, but we still are not able to hear anybody.
Hello? Hello?
We heard you. We can hear you.
Oh, I just wanted to show that we would have to unmute ourselves. I don't
I
have a
think that
question. I just wanted
is
to,
required.
yep.
Perfect. Thanks, Rosie.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I can unmute myself now.
So if anyone's having trouble unmuting yourself, you may need to look at the attendee list where your name is, and on the far left there's a microphone. You can check that. If it's got a line through it, you can't. You're muted, and when you click it, it should turn green.
Yeah, perhaps if anybody has any thoughts on what Julie had suggested, saying that perhaps putting in the dispute URL for on the model validation notice is a no-no. I don't know if anybody else has anything they can share. We definitely are interested in her thoughts there, or if anybody else can fill us in, that would be fantastic. If not, we will definitely talk about it at our next webinar. I see. So Julie is saying that John Bedard says no payment portal on the model validation notice. So I I can see that I can see how that could be a problem. We'll have to. Thank you for bringing that up. We're going to do some more research on that, Julie, and figure out how we can get around that. Do we have any other questions at this time?
Hey, this is Matt. I got a quick question. I know the model validation notice that you have, we can download it and, use it through Letter Vendor. But if we were to send it through email, are we sending it through ACE email, or are you recommending a vendor so it can be sent securely?
We're currently sending it through ACE is how it is set up.
Okay, but it won't be, it couldn't be a protected document unless we get some outside third party vendor, or I don't know, encryption software or something like that to send it securely, correct?
Correct. Email inherently is insecure. So if you don't feel comfortable sending it over regular email, which if you have HIPAA concerns, that might be a route you'll have to go.
Right, and the reason why I ask is even if we could figure that part out, you know, the ELS option where you get to opt in and those fields in ACE are populated. I was wondering if there was a way to show the document was not only delivered, but read or opened or something like that. I know, you know, the CompuMails of the world and other vendors have figured that out, but I didn't know if there was anything or plan in the future for ACE to automatically populate any fields like that that might be in the future for email actually open versus delivered.
We absolutely have plans in the future to implement that. It's currently in the you know, back half of
Okay.
of these phases, but as well as being able to handle inbound emails,
Thank
you
you.
know,
And
automatically.
I just want to say, you know, thank you so much for all the work you guys have put into this in such a short amount of time. I mean, the biggest changes in our industry in a long time. So great work, guys.
We all appreciate that, Matt. Thank you very much.
Greg, you may have already addressed this. In fact, I'm pretty sure I heard you do it, but I'm kind of filling in the text responses to the questions where they asked if there's an itemization mismatch, will the validation letter be rejected? That is true, correct?
That is true. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So it looks like, Julie, we have a little bit of, I'm getting a little bit of back channel chatter on your dispute link. He has definitely said that. However, he also indicated that self-service portals, like our virtual agent, would be potentially acceptable. So we may have to, I think we're gonna need to dig in a little further into that to see if we can get a little more clarity on that. Very well could just be up to you, you know, it's a gray area in the, you know, in the new regulations, and that, you know, you'll have to decide as an agency which direction you want to go. But we will try to definitely dig up some better information there.
One more question, Greg. Are the agents gonna be able to enter validation given in the account screen if they're logging a phone call locally? There was a question Matt had asked for the phone log section and new validation field. Can they give this over the phone instead of sending the letter? I think you talked about that a little bit, but I was wondering, kind of as an addendum to that, in the phone log, there is that validation notice given,
Correct.
right? Is there a way for an agent to manually enter that in the notate account field, or is that something we might consider in the future?
Yes, we'll have to add that into our
Okay,
onto our account header there.
okay, excellent, thank you.
Yeah, but currently it's only in place for you know, the dialer vendors.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure how people are feeling about that. I was kind of under the assumption that providing you know, verbal validation information is probably not going to be very common. If that's not the case, please let us know, and maybe we need to focus a little bit more on that.
Yeah, that sounds right to me as well.
Well, great. It looks like we're at the top of the hour here. Does anybody have any other quick questions? If not, oh, looks like we got one more in here. If an action code could populate the phone log field for verbal validation, that would be great. Verbal validation is not, oh yeah. Yeah, I think Matt Kiefer, yes, that is correct. We'll need to add that into the basically the disposition area in ACE for the phone call, and then you can set it with an action code. So I think that was kind of a last minute addition, and we need to circle back and get that added in. We'll make sure that's there with the permission, of course. All right. With that being said, I guess we will see you for our next webinar. If you have any questions, please go ahead and send them in. Do we have a support channel? Sorry, Cheryl, for questions and suggestions?
Right now, I think that's email.
Are we,
I don't think that we have
should we have
a
well, let's just
specific.
yeah, let's send those into support at interprose.com, and we'll make sure they get directed to our development team or whoever's the appropriate resource there. So please send them in. This is all new to everybody, so we appreciate all the feedback and knowledge and information that's being provided. All right. With that being said, we'll get back to cracking here. You guys have a great one. Appreciate it.
Victoria, if you would like to leave the session open just for another couple minutes, I'm going to go ahead and try to finish putting text answers into all of our questions.
Okay, sounds good.
Up there. Okay, thank you. And if anyone adds any more, I'll try to get to those too. But for a few minutes, I think.
Yep.
Thank you. Victoria, did you have anything else?
I think Victoria is having trouble unmuting herself. Cheryl?
That's all right. Hey, thanks everybody. It looks like most people are leaving, so thanks everybody for joining. I'll go ahead and finish addressing those questions and then we'll shut things down.
I think Jennifer had a question really quick about the do not text under the bundle propagation so that any new bundle member will be stamped. That is correct. There should be a bundle propagation area there for do not text.
All right, great, thank you.
Greg, are you still on?
Yep.
Again, you may have answered some of these while I was typing, but
Did I
if
miss
the
some other
return
ones?
mail if the return mail field is filled in, will there be an action path that would block the account from reporting to the credit bureau? Did you address that one?
Sort of. That's basically, we have workflow, so you can
choose whether or not to include it or
you can
to right.
set a flag. I mean, if there's a mail return on the account, I mean, the short answer is that we haven't really addressed the credit reporting issues quite yet. So
Right.
I guess I don't have an answer yet
Well,
because we haven't really outlined it yet.
Currently that field is available via logic blocks, so we would be able
Yes.
to use it as exclusionary criteria for accounts eligible for credit reporting. So I think that's the
Correct.
current answer. Okay.
I'm finally starting to get really good, solid information on credit reporting, so I feel like we can develop a solid plan on how to handle that. But that will definitely be a part of it. Yeah, if it's been 14 days, well, you're probably not going to report anyway until 30 days past your validation notice anyway. So we'll just have a check in there for mail return. What we'll probably have to we're probably going to need to create a field because you can report, right? If you have not received a validation notice within
14 days.
14 days. Yep. The question I have is can you report at say 30 days if you received a return notice between 14 and 30 days.
Yes. My understanding from, I'm
Okay.
saying that, I jumped into that real quick. I'm saying that based on what the ACA has, attorneys have said. That seems to be their interpretation,
I wasn't
but it might
quite
be
sure.
risky.
Well, my thought was, well, do you need to report as soon as possible now? Because the moment you know that it was returned, then all of a sudden you're on the hook, right? You know that it was returned. Why did you report it? Do you see where I'm going with that?
Well, yeah, you have to wait for the 14 at least.
At a
And
minimum,
yep,
right? But then other
yep,
people already have the requirement that they don't report, right, for 30 days anyway after placement. So
right.
is that
Yeah.
changing? Is that now based off of itemization date?
I don't think that these rules change any other regulated requirements.
Yeah, that's unclear to me.
Yeah, I think that it depends what the other requirements are and where they're coming from, and
My
but
gut tells me is the credit bureaus are just behind, and they're going to be telling us what it needs to be changed to in the based on,
sure.
that we should be sending itemizations dates in for a lot of the, because right now we're sending in assigned dates, right,
Hmm.
for credit
Yep.
reporting purposes. But my guess is they're going
Oh,
to want us to send itemization dates and itemization
absolutely. Yeah,
in the future. So
that makes sense.
I'm still
Sure. Did
waiting
you
for that
already
info.
address the question about itemization fields for the letter vendor? I think that was a little bit, I don't know if you addressed it. I know the itemization fields for the account are available for the letter vendor. Itemization
I think
transactions are not yet.
correct. They are not available.
Is that something we expect to be different, or is that right now? I know they're available for local print. Actually, I don't even know that. I don't know that they are
We can make them
yet.
available for local print pretty easily.
Okay. Okay. So I know there was a question about itemization fields. That was from Kate Austin, and she's already left. So I'm not sure what she was referring to. She doesn't
We
say if she's referring to account data or
Yeah, I think what we
transaction data.
need to do is show an existing, well, add those fields to an existing, you know, vendor export like CompuMail and add those fields into the template so people can see what those look like. So they can just cut and paste them in. You know what I'm saying?
Can you say that again?
That we need to send out here's what you need to do to send these new fields to your letters, right? In the template, add these fields.
Sure. Yeah, we can go over that later. I'm not, so I can make sure that there's a good document with instructional guidance on that. Yeah,
I think it's important just to make it easier.
yep. I'll make a note so you and I can go over that, Greg, and we can make sure something gets out there.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. They'll need to re-download their letter templates, stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Letter source, I guess, or whatever we call it.
Yep. I believe we actually included those instructions with the sample template help file.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, the sample model form.
Oh, good.
Mhm.
So they should be able to see them there and paste them
Yep.
into their template.
Oh, you know what? They might not be. I take that back. We didn't include those. I'm thinking about thinking about another one of the pieces. I'm thinking about the ETL loader.
I see.
No, the SQL reports. Totally different thing. So yes, that's a good point. We'll make sure that those instructions, those standard instructions get included in with that detail. I'll add it there. about registering the database. We still have a couple people, and we still have a few more questions. I believe we'll have a record of these questions, so that's kind of why I'm trying to fill in these answers before we shut the session down, so we can maybe have them in an FAQ to go after. Okay, I think this was, yeah. Mm,
So we've got to figure out the go-to meeting stuff. So Aaron, Ryder, and Victoria both lost the ability to manage the webinar.
Well,
Just a heads up. I don't know if
yeah,
you were getting those messages. They couldn't unmute
I was,
themselves. They
oh,
couldn't control the presentation.
oh, okay. Interesting. We'll have to, yeah, we'll circle back on that, do some checking before the next webinar. Looks like we still have a couple of people. Let's see, I need. Okay. I think we got, if an action cut could populate the following. Okay, amount already, yeah, I think we got all our questions answered. The last one I see was the one from Julie. I think you have to wait until after the dispute time frame to report to, okay, yep. So I think all of our questions about the content that we covered today have been addressed in those comments. So
Okay.
Greg, I think we are at a point we can wrap up. Thanks for everyone who held out and stuck around and asked lots of good questions.
Absolutely. Yep.
And thanks, Victoria. Sorry you lost communication. Do you want to stay, if you're still there, Victoria, maybe we can, I
If
can
we
check
boot
and see.
everybody and
Well, I just want to see if I am able to do anything to
she's listed
yep,
as
Victoria.
an organizer and a presenter.
I just unmuted you. Can you say something? Hmm.
I can't unmute Aaron either.
Oh, hang on a sec. Let's see, I can't, it says attendee is self-muted and is muted by an organizer. So I think what might be happening is if multiples of us are muting or unmuting people, sometimes they have a double mute, if you will. It looks
Yeah.
like,
Victoria looks like she's muted.
yeah, I just unmuted her. She may have stepped away from her desk. So
We'll see if
that's why I
Aaron's on.
was, but I can't, and I've tried to unmute Aaron, but I'm getting, let's see, it says a request to unmute has been sent. Attendee is self-muted and is muted by organizer. Okay. And a request to unmute has been sent. Here. You know what? Let's see.
Yeah,
I'm
it says
trying.
self-muted. That's what I see too.
Yeah. Attendees who can take keyboard and mouse control. Victoria is the only one. Attendees who can share their webcam. It looks like all of us. Let me try attendees who have full audio control and may unmute themselves. Unmute all attendees. Hold on. Nope, that doesn't seem to do a thing. Yeah, I'm not sure. We may, yeah, that didn't have, I mean, I know Aaron was speaking early and obviously Victoria did the whole session. So Victoria's looks like somehow, maybe when we did a mute all or an unmute all or something,
Yeah.
it hit it. So, all right, well, we can do some further testing. I think that we'll have some different settings in place anyway when we do the next one. So that should make all the difference in the world. Okay.
Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Greg. Talk to you later. Thanks,
I
everybody.
will. What do I need to do to? Is somebody able to capture the recording of this if I end
Yeah,
it?
I think yes. I think Aaron's already got it. It was recorded. The
Okay.
session is being recorded, and Aaron has the webinar organizer, the top level, and because it's a webinar and not a go-to meeting, I think there's a whole lot of pieces. In other words, these questions and answers should be
Got it.
available in the chats and things like that. So I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that all of those will be available.
Oh, if you go under File or under Options, where did I see that? Under File, you can save the chat log and save the question log. Did you see that?
Let me find it because I will go ahead and do that if I can.
It's under File.
Where are you saying file?
I'll take a screenshot.
Yeah. Okay. I'll watch Slack for it. Let's see. Oh,
See
look,
it?
now I'm seeing all that chat. Hang on just a second.
Was there stuff going on in the chat too? I was just looking at the questions.
I see Victoria's and Aaron's chat information, but I didn't see it until just now, so I
Yeah,
don't
me
know
neither.
what was
It's a
going on
dumb
there. Okay, I
interface.
see. It's not perfect, but it's serving a purpose. Okay, let's see.
You're very kind.
Let's go to downloads. Let's see. Okay, we're going to save that, and I will go ahead and get the Q&A also saved. Let's see. File, save questions log. Okay, we're saved.
Good to
All right,
go? Awesome.
ready to go. All right,
All right.
talk to you
See ya.
later.